I caused actually some explosions.
The world of growth, it's a new world.
Growth Advisor actually can help you figure out that growth architect, that map. A lot of founders in early stage, they use Google Analytics. It's okay, but I would say it's last generation of analytic tool. You want to have tools like...
On the equity side, is it like 0.1% or is it like 2%?
Wins change people's perception. You can get more resources, everything else become easier. Product-led growth is fundamentally data-led growth.
You are a star. Hila, I'm so excited for this. I heard so many good things from Josh before the show. So first, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Harry. It'll be a fun experience.
Oh, it'll be a great chat, but I want to start with a little bit on you and provide some context. So we see Acorns, we see GitLab, and the world of growth, it's a new world. So how did you make your way into the world of growth and come to lead some incredible growth orgs at Acorns and GitLab most recently?
So believe it or not, I was a biology major and I suck at doing experiments in the lab. I caused actually some explosions. Everyone is safe, so don't worry. But I always loved the idea of scientific experiment. So I got my MBA. I transitioned into the business world, initially as a data analyst. But very quickly, I found that doing data analysis is awesome, but I don't get to do anything with my awesome recommendations. The PMs, the marketers, they don't take my recommendations. So I joined a very small startup called growthhackers.com, and I become a product manager growth. And back then, that title is confusing, like product manager growth? What do you exactly do? But I love that role. It really allowed me to use my analytical background, my product manager background, my marketing background. I pretty much do everything. And from there, I become kind of this growth person. I joined Acorns and ended up leading their entire growth team as VP growth. And most recently, I joined GitLab, building their growth team from scratch as well. Now I work as a growth advisor. So I'm really deep into the world of growth.
I love it. And I spoke to Josh before the show, and he said that I really had to dig in on the Acorns journey because you were so instrumental to building that growth org and really making sure it worked so efficiently. He asked, what tactic really worked and what did you learn from that?
Yeah. I think I would say there are definitely some, I would say, mega learning from my Acorns experience. First of all, the company really starts as a product that people loved. We have a feature called round up your spare change so that you can invest with very small amount of money. Our early adopters loved it. And that powered the initial word of mouth growth. And from there, I think one thing we did right is that we layered on multiple growth channels. So initially it's word of mouth. We quickly expanded to paid, like Facebook. We're very early in capturing the Facebook wave. We added paid referral. And then we diversified into more paid channels. We added new product lines so that we can charge more. And then that higher revenue allow us to unlock higher CAC in paid channels or more paid channels. I think that layering on really helped. That's one learning. The other one I would say is we established a full funnel growth team. By full funnel, I mean marketing, growth product, analytics, design engineer, we sit together. I manage that team. So I'm responsible for acquisition, how to get people download the app, but also I'm responsible for getting them to sign up, invest their money, become a paid customer, retain, and maybe try other products, right? So that really full funnel approach allow us to unlock many opportunities and experiments and successes.
You mentioned Facebook there. I have to dig in on it because Josh brought it up specifically. In terms of Facebook ads and optimizing them, I'd love to just go a little deeper. How did you figure out how to optimize Facebook ads and what really worked on Facebook ads for you?
Yeah. First of all, I think as a disclaimer, this was back in 2008, 2019, right? And the world of Facebook and paid ads change every day, especially I think after 2020 with iOS 14, they make the tracking more strict. Everything changed. So specific tactics may not work, but I can definitely share the process. We figure a new channel out. I think that is still applicable. So I would say there are a couple of things. In terms of process and team, we have a team that we do daily stand-up. Like your typical engineer teams do daily stand-up, but our acquisition team, we do daily stand-up. In the daily stand-up, we will watch where we are in the App Store ranking, and we're like, yeah, we're up, or no, we're down, or some other companies jumped out from nowhere and we hate them. So like that really gave us a lot of velocity and focus on this. So that's one. And then we have a cross-functional team as well. We have designer and channel experts and data person and myself in that room together. So we share all sorts of data. We brainstorm experiments. We launch them quickly. I think a big part of making Facebook work is there are a lot of standard best practice. We use lookalike audience. We kind of optimize towards our best customers, like who are looking like our best customers. That's our goal. But we do large amount of creativity testing, like all the ads we produce. We launch new ads every day, pretty much. And then we do all sorts of ads. Like one thing that's really funny, back then, I think there is this company called Cameo, and they have the celebrities and doing things, and we have them do ads for us. Like we basically have an early partnership with them. We have some celebrities we try, like they record a short thing, we do ads. We also do a bunch of like very native ads. Someone go to gas station and then just pump gas and say Acorns help them. Like the ordinary person gas station version works much better than the celebrity. And we also do a lot of interesting ones, things you wouldn't expect actually work. Like we'll ask people to do a math question about investing, calculating if you invest 1 cent today, 2 cents tomorrow, 4 cents on Wednesday, like how much it will be. People guess it wrong, but that grab people's attention and they go to the App Store, download Acorns ads. So tons of creativity ads testing that really unlock a lot of success. And we definitely layer on the tools and the data. Like we have tools for attribution, we have Singular, we have a lot of internal data analysis. So I think the team, the creative ads testing, the tools, data, all of that together unlock the success for us.
You mentioned that about like the diversification of channels early and kind of layering on the channels. The thing that I often see is founders very keen to diversify their channels early when they have something that's working. And I always say, if you've got something that's working, great, double down on it. Like don't get too cute too early. How do you advise founders on channel diversification? Should they start with many at the start? Should they start with one, test, move on? Like, how do you advise them on the diversification of channels in the early days?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you're absolutely right. If you find something that works, definitely don't let it go. Like double down on it, try to squeeze everything out of it. I would say in the very, very beginning, you want to kind of try a couple of different channels just to get some ideas, because you will learn something, like all the rules changing all the time. You will learn something out of it. But usually from paid perspective, like Facebook, Google, maybe TikTok now are the biggest ones, right? You want to figure them out. Usually, one of those, if you figure it out, is enough for you. And a lot of learnings you can apply to other channels. So that's one. The other thing I would say, don't only focus on paid. And we will talk a little bit later, right? Paid is powerful. Paid is quick. But over time, you will see all the best, most successful companies, they always have some sort of viral approach or content-based SEO approach. Those take time, and those is much deeper, much harder for Facebook to change rules overnight and mess it up, right? So you want to layer that on as well over time.
I think the number one reason people fail with content is they give up too easily. Exactly as you said, it takes time and you have to be patient. We mentioned what worked well. On the flip side, what didn't work well, and what did you learn from that not working?
Yeah, many things didn't work, right? Like you would assume for everything I shared, the other half didn't work, at least. I think many channels didn't work. At one time, we sponsored NASCAR. And it's a lot of money, but we didn't see any visible lift in our results. we try to distribute content on many financial media, like very established media outlets that doesn't give us kind of direct results as well. Snapchat, Pinterest, those work, but those are hard to scale. Like you don't get large scale similar to Facebook and Google. Many experiments my growth product managers launched didn't work as well. There's one experiment I remember. I think that's really interesting to share. We have this paid referral mechanism. Like you invest, you invite your friends, you get $5, your friend get $5 to get started. That's very typical standard paid referral. We layered on kind of a monthly campaign on top of that to make it even more attractive. For example, for this month, if you invite 5 friends, on top of those $5, you may get additional benefit of like, I don't know, $50, or you get something. We experimented, like we plant a tree for every friend you invite as well. Like we did a lot of that. I think those monthly promotional campaign with additional money incentive worked on the numbers. We get people to do things. We kind of, some of them, they invite 4 friends, didn't get to 5. So they didn't end up getting the bonus, but we get the number, we get some new users joining. And those users are good users. So initially everything looks great. The numbers are good. We use this for a while actually. But over a longer term, we begin to see that the quality of invited users drop. And like, which is expectedly will happen, right? But, so I think there is this trade-off, right? You always want to do things that impact number, but you also don't only want to look at the near-term results. You want to monitor long-term metrics. On the other hand, some channels will work. There is this period of time it'll work great, and after some time it will die down. Like it is a forever trade-off and experiment and monitoring in the growth world.
I think that's a really important thing for founders to understand, which is like your CAC today will not be your CAC tomorrow. Like as you saturate your initial market, you will not only have a reduction in quality of your subsequent user, but you'll also be paying more for them in a lot of cases, which is why I love it when it's like, this is my CAC forever. So I totally agree. Now, this series is designed for founders who are building out growth teams. And I think there's just a big question on definitions first. How do you define growth, and VP or head of growth first?
Yeah, I think growth is a tricky thing. It is both the results and the discipline. And whenever you have that, it is a hard job. Like sales is a result, right? You get sales, and it's also a discipline, it's a function. So growth is by results, I mean, like, what are you trying to grow, right? You want to grow your ARR, your revenue, your user base, your metrics, whatever. I think the other layer is you want to grow them sustainably, not just like for a short period of time. And growth as a discipline, it is really, in my view, about using scientific methods to grow business KPIs. Like there are the core methods is around data and experimentation, which is similar to scientific method, right? There are different levers you can grow. You can grow by growing acquisition or activation or revenue or retention. All of those different aspects will lead to growth. You can also grow by different channels. You can grow by product. You can grow via marketing. Like there are also the channel aspects. So growth is both results and the discipline and approach. And in terms of the different titles, I would say there are also some different nuances, right? You talk about VP, right? VP, director, growth PM. Sometimes there is a chief growth officer. Those are the different levels of a growth leader. But you also have different focus. Some people is more focused on growth product. Some people is more focused on growth marketing. Some can do both. So yeah, like I don't know how to summarize it. It is a little bit confusing, but there are some nuances to this growth thing.
So now we have like the definition, the meta definition of growth there. The way that growth is implemented changes drastically, whether it's B2C or B2B. For founders listening, kind of, we have both that listen. How does it differ between B2B and B2C? And how should a B2B growth team look compared to a B2C?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had the pleasure to build both teams. I built a B2C growth team at Acorns. I built a B2B growth team at GitLab. And it is an experiment for myself as well, to be honest. So I think B2C growth team, as I mentioned, I usually think the full funnel team is the most powerful. Like I mentioned, right? I have growth marketing, who is mostly focused on acquisition. They are the channel experts. They want to get more users to download the app, sign up for a product via all different channels. There is the lifecycle marketing aspect, like thinking about email, push notification, messaging, how to engage your existing users. And there are basically CRM specialists in those teams. And then the last piece is the growth product team, where I have growth product manager, engineer, designer, analyst. They work on all sorts of experiments, how to make sign-up flow more efficient, how to get new users onboarded quickly, how to increase conversion rate. They kind of basically do a lot of experiments across the entire user journey. And then there is the data analyst component. So that's the most typical B2C growth team. Like you have user acquisition, lifecycle marketing, growth product, and data analyst. And they usually report to the product org. Like I reported to chief product officer. I reported to the CEO for some time as well. But that's kind of the most likely setup. B2B growth team, on the other hand, is a different animal. The core team is the same. You still have the PM, you have the design, engineer, analyst. So the squad itself is very similar. But I would say the growth org, the product-led growth organization in a B2B company is broader. For example, at GitLab, I was head of the product growth team, right? I sit in the product org, but I have counterparts in marketing who is kind of collaborating with me. I have counterpart in sales, which is totally new, doesn't exist in B2C. This is because the user journey, the buying journey in B2B is much more complex. You have multiple stakeholders you need to convince. The cycle is 3 months rather than 3 minutes in comparing to downloading the app. So that org is broader. And in terms of reporting structure, most commonly growth teams still report to the product org, like myself. However, sometimes you may say there is a kind of different structure where there is almost like a general manager of the self-serve business or product-led growth business line. The general manager manage kind of growth, product, and marketing and sales. And this person may report to the VP sales or chief revenue officer or kind of head of GTM. Like that is possible as well.
So when I hear you, I hear kind of pretty extensive growth orgs, and I'm thinking, wow, this is quite a developed org, and that's quite a costly growth team. If we peel it back for an early stage founder thinking about hiring their first growth hires, when do you advise founders on when's the right time to make the first growth hire?
Yeah, I think the overall principle you probably heard many times is get your product ready first, right? Find your PMF and hire, thinking about hiring for growth. But I would love to add some nuance to it. For example, I talked with a founder. He has a product that's a Chrome extension enable collaboration, right? He has 10 people in his team. He's talking with me about growth and hiring for growth. I suggest him to hire a growth PM or lead growth PM right now, even before raising the Series A. Why? Because for his product, that collaboration, right, that viral growth is so critical. It's almost part of the product. So you want to figure that out early on. He ended up finding someone from, I think previously from Dropbox with that viral growth experience. And that's awesome. That helped him actually raise the next round. So if your product has a social collaboration, network effect, that kind of thing, think about Slack, LinkedIn, right? Or anything like, or Airtable, Figma. Hiring for growth early on, a little bit earlier, will allow you to engineering those growth loops into the product itself. And that can be very powerful.
I also think growth like early growth hires can help you like find product market. I hate it when it's like growth is not a solution to product market fit. But as we said there about the testing of different channels, quite often your ICP, your ideal customer profile, will be different to how you anticipate. And actually a growth hire who's tested several different channels can find that Pinterest with middle-aged women in America is actually your ICP when you thought it was younger women. Or do you know what I mean? They can find elements that you didn't know before, which suggest product market fit. Okay, so when you have, I like that nuance. Next question, how do we know what profile to hire for that first growth hire? Are they senior, junior? What does that hire look like, do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. I think in terms of senior, junior, I usually, when I talk with early stage founders, I advise them to hire kind of an experienced growth PM or experienced growth marketer. Don't go for VP growth from the very beginning. Don't go for someone very junior who hasn't done this before, because that kind of middle layer gave you some advantages. They have experience, especially in one of the area, maybe in product or more in the marketing. Try to find someone who is very analytical, good with data, and eager to learn. Like they want to learn the other aspects. They also have the drive to become a head of growth one day. So I think all of those components is more advantage to the founder, and also give you the options, right? You can potentially grow this person into your head of growth, or if like that doesn't work out, you can still have the option to hire an external head of growth to partner with this person. Like when I, as I mentioned, when I joined growthhackers.com, my title is PM growth, but I was doing everything, and I was learning everything pretty much new as well. And I was very scrappy. I tried to do things without engineer or without data, without everything. Like, I think you want to find someone who is like that, and he can have the potential to become your head of growth one day.
I think a lot of potential growth hires are nervous about being the first. Like anything, being the first is nerve-wracking. For founders listening, what can they say to convince a potential growth hire that they should join and this is the right place, even though they are the first?
That's a great question. I think I would say like the best growth person, not even the best, the person with the best growth potential probably are nervous and excited at the same time, right? Like if it's only nervous and scared, then probably maybe growth is not your thing, because growth is new every day. I would say what is helpful for the founders to explain is, first of all, the culture within the company, right? This is growth can make or break when the culture is not right, when the company itself is not really thinking about data or using data and experimentation as a discipline to make decisions, when he or she not only need to do experiments, but also need to convince everyone, right? Beg for resources. That's the hardest part. So I think if the founder himself or herself has the growth mindset, believes in data, believes in experiments, believes in the scientific approach, and the leadership kind of is aligned, that is very important sign for me, at least if I'm thinking about joining any org, right? That's really, really critical. And also lay out the potential and the opportunity for this role. Like it is new, but everything is there for you to mess up with and figure out and like try, right? So I think there's a lot of excitement along with that as well.
I totally get you. I think charting that career trajectory and showing a pathway to a head of growth at a hyperscale company is really what excites a lot of the best. Say I decided not to hire this growth hire and I went for an agency. When does hiring an agency work well, and when does it not work well?
Yeah, that's a great question. In general, I think agency should come a little bit later. Because if you're thinking about figure out your growth mechanism, right? This is pretty fundamental to your business, to your point. Like you have PMF, but also you need to have channel, right? You need to have some sort of unit economics and channel works. Otherwise, it's not a viable business. So hire an agency for that feels very irresponsible and wouldn't work in the most cases. So you need to think about if you're building a skyscraper, you need to be the architect. You need to be the growth architect. Like a founder need to be very invested in figure out growth channels. And you can hire someone with expertise to work alongside with you. Like that is the main thing. But certain building block later on may be outsourced, or you may tap into expertise. The most things I see may be successful than others is if paid, like is your main channel, is your initial growth loop. Some agencies are like specialized on that. You can use them to scale, right? Or if you stumble upon certain specialized areas like pricing, or you need more support in creating creative ads, you don't have capacity in-house, maybe you can tap into some consultant or agency. But I would say the most fundamental things is about figuring out your growth model, the initial channels. That cannot be outsourced, and you need to figure that out on your own.
I'm totally with you. There is real specialists in terms of channels. Like I see a lot of actually TikTok and Facebook today, which are potentially worth it over time. You mentioned tapping into knowledge and wisdom there. Some tap into the knowledge and wisdom through growth advisors like you and Elena Werner, who are obviously both incredible people to add. But when does a growth advisor work and when does it not work? And how do you advise founders on whether or not to bring on a growth advisor?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the benefit of hiring growth advisor is that growth advisor actually can help you figure out that growth architect, that map, not just building blocks or tactics. What is the growth model? What are the potential channels you should try? What are some product-led growth mechanisms you need to build internally? A right growth advisor with the relevant experience can help you with that. The other thing I would add there is that growth advisors come in different shapes as well, right? There are the ones who are really good with super early stage PMF. There are also the ones who are good at scaling stage. So you need to find the one with the right expertise that can help you. So that's one. And I would say growth advisor need to be paired still with a team or as a founder, right? Advisor don't have the capacity to execute things. So you need to have someone to execute. As a recent example, one of the company I advise, they are Series B. They want to do product-led growth. They have something, the basics. They don't know how to do it like in the scientific way or scale it. They paired with me as an advisor with their head of investor relationship. It sounds interesting, right? But this guy, he's very analytical. He's very smart. He doesn't have growth PM experience specifically, but he knows data so well of the company. And he knows all the teams, like the product team. He can socialize the product team, the marketing team, all of them. So our partnership actually was very successful, much more successful than I expected. So like, I think that's another thing. To pair with a growth advisor, you still need to have someone internal who can work with this person to make it work.
How do you compensate a growth advisor? Is it pure salary? Is it salary and equity? For me as a founder, if I want to work with you or some of the best, what does that look like just so I can budget for it?
Yeah. So for me, I've seen both models for me, myself, and also many other experts I know. We usually have a monthly kind of returner model. We have a 6 months engagement or even a year. And then it's usually a blend of cash and equity. Personally, myself, for earlier stage, I may kind of be willing to take more equity. If the company is really great and awesome, for a little bit later, it's more towards the cash side.
Totally get you. This is really unfair of me to ask. On the equity side, I know founders listening will be like, great, but is it 0.1% or is it 2%? If you're early stage, we're Series A, what kind of level is it just generally? 0.1, 2, 10? Where does it say?
No, I think I would say, obviously this is very personal. I'm sure every different growth expert or advisor have different kind of strategy. Personally, for me, I think it's definitely much lower than the kind of you hire a full-time executive, right? Mm-hmm. You shouldn't, like, for me, I don't ask for that. Like, I usually ask for a reasonable amount so that we can have a kind of a great relationship. And the key thing is that as an advisor, I'm incentivized to participate in the upside. Like, even a small percentage of equity will be actually more powerful than sometimes a large amount of cash in some cases, right? For selected companies.
Absolutely, if you're there at the Series A. Now, you are my growth advisor and you're my friend, okay, on this mission to hire my first growth hire. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how to hire them, Hila. So you're going to help me. How do I literally structure the process of hiring my first growth hire? What do the stages look like? From step one, what do I do?
Yeah. And I actually helped quite a few founders going through this process. I would say the first thing is write the job description. It shouldn't be your standard job description because as I mentioned, the first step, there are some like homework for the founder to do. You need to think about your growth model. What are the initial growth loops or growth mechanisms? That's important. Because that is something you should be trying to look for. Like, for example, I work with a founder of fintech app. They figured a lot of things out. They also figured out a lot of early paid channels, and their payback is great. I'm like, yeah, for this growth person, you really want to have someone with super strong paid channel expertise because you already figured it out. You literally need someone to amplify it, right? Maybe there are some other different cases. They have a user base that's already there. They want to really systematically thinking about the entire growth funnel. In that case, maybe a more head of growth or lead growth PM with growth product expertise makes more sense. So you need to do the homework, figure that out, because that will go to your job description. In those job descriptions, I usually advise the founders to lay out some early KPIs and initial focus areas that will map to what you need and also the expertise of the person. And also,
can I just dig in? What would some examples of the KPIs be? Would that be like the revenue numbers, the user numbers, the DAOs? What would that be? Just take an example.
Yeah, like it will be, first of all, like the North Star metric, right? What are the key things? Like for a B2B business, it may be revenue. For a B2C, it may be users, active users, but also some initial focus areas. For example, for one company I work with, I help them figure out like, activating new users, onboarding, and free to paid conversion. Those are one of the initial possible focus areas. So in the job description, you don't need to go that deep, but you can talk about, hey, there will be a lot of focus on the onboarding, activation, conversion, like that will help you track the right expertise and also make your thinking super clear as well.
Okay, so we have the KPIs in the job description. We figured out the growth model. We figured out a couple of the growth loops. So we've got a kind of understanding of what sort of profile we want from that understanding. Mm-hmm. What do we do now, Hila?
Yeah, the next step is usually try to share this around in your network, in all the growth channels. Like I help pass this along because there's that concentration of people, and it's always better to figure out someone who know your potential hire. So like try to get referrals, share that like crazy. And then once you begin to get some candidates applications, try to do some screening. I would say there is a company list that I know that has great growth people, and I share that with the founders, and maybe what is the industry, what is the skill set, like all those, if there's a perfect fit, right? Awesome. Try to go after them as quickly as possible. From there, I help a couple founders actually create a take-home assignment, because that is a very nice way to really know their thinking and allow the candidate to share their more comprehensive thinking as well. And then the last step will be the interview. And you need to interview with the founder, the leadership team, your collaborators, and maybe someone in your team as well, like engineer, designers, but also the VP marketing, VP sales, if you need to work with them.
Can I ask you, on the take-home assignment, is that always on your business, like the one that you're hiring for, or is it on the business that they've worked in before? Because obviously they'll have a lot more historical expertise from the business they've worked in before. So how do you do the take-home assignments?
I try to do it in my business, in the company that's hiring, because you want to get people who are quick at thinking, right? Quick at learning new things. That's essential skill set of a growth person. I have a couple questions I like to use. One of those is like, just go to my company's website, go through the entire journey as a new user, pretend you're new, you're exploring Acorns, you're exploring GitLab, download the app and try it yourself. Construct a new user funnel. Like, what are the steps you will include in the funnel? What are the numbers and metrics you will try to collect to understand whether this funnel is effective or not? That can help me know, hey, how do they think about things? How do they think about data? Do they know the most important concepts like aha moments and things like that? Is that funnel ended at downloading app? That's a big red flag. Like, they don't even go beyond that, right? So that's one. The other one is I will ask them to propose 3 experiment ideas and share their hypothesis and how will they measure success metrics. Like that, again, help me understand what's their level of growth expertise. Do they have great ideas? Like sometimes we do get great ideas from candidates and we test them and we let them know as well if we have the results back. The last component is a more heavy data analysis component. I usually share some real data and a real problem we're trying to solve analytically. Like I will allow them to think very open-ended, like how would they approach this problem? What other things they may try to look? What other conclusions they will draw from the preliminary data? So that's how I would structure the take-home assignment.
Can I ask, what would be some really big red flags for you when engaging in this interview process, where you'd be really worried when you saw them in the interview process?
One of my favorite questions I ask is, what is the most unexpected experiment result you saw, and what do you do after it? And the reason I love that interview question is because, first of all, people get prepared about their most successful experiments. I don't want to ask for that for sure. Unexpected is in a way that they must have done a lot of experiments and then they have something unexpected. And what they do after to dissect that results and to take out kind of the issues and figure out the next steps is critical. If I hear them, look, no, I don't have any unexpected experiments, everything worked as I planned, that's a red flag because that's not possible. Like 60% of A/B testing fail. If you have done growth or experiments, you should have something. That's one. The other red flag, I would say, too big of an ego, like lack of self-awareness. And I think that's a in general one, like not just growth, but for growth, it's even a bigger red flag because you will fail a lot of times. You need to work with a lot of different teams. You need to be willing to negotiate, have a communication, or rather than prescribe your thing to everyone. Like that's another one.
I think one I see is like a rigid mindset, which is where you have a growth leader who's had success in a playbook in Facebook ads from 2018. And they're like, you know what, it's this way. And you're like, well, the world's changed a bit.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
That's okay. So you've helped me hire this great candidate and we're onboarding them. We've spoken before about the first 90 days. And so I want to start there. You've broken it down into first week, first month and first quarter. I love this article, which I'll include in the links. What do we want to achieve in the first week?
Yeah, I think first week is really about get a lay of the land. I would say the 5 things you want to focus on. Learn about what tools you have. Like, do you have Optimizely as an experimentation tool? Do you have a product analytics tool like Amplitude? And also understand the past initiatives, like what worked, what didn't work. The second thing is dive into historical data. Like growth people crave for data. If you can do that, that's great. The third thing is meet with your manager, your CEO, and other leaders. And then the fourth thing, meet with your own team, your collaborators, like engineers, designers, analysts, or your people in your team. And the last one is try to sit in a customer call or go to a user research session, listen to your customers to just get a feeling of who they are.
So we have that as a first week. That's a busy first week, Hila. Impressed with your productivity. Next, first month. As a founder, what should I expect you to do in the first month?
Yeah, I think first month you need to begin to generate some results. Like I think growth is all, like I mentioned, growth is a discipline and a results. But the quicker you can generate results, the easier it will be for you as a growth leader or growth practitioner to move forward. So I would say try to find some early wins, try to do some quick fix, try to just make some impact. The 5 things I pick for first month is pick a growth metric. The first one. Second, identify a focus area where you want to work on. Like rather than you want to change DAU on the first day, what are the smaller things, specific things you want to work on? Launch some experiments, like try your best, change something. Analysis wouldn't change results. You need to do something to change results. The fourth thing is set up some communication mechanism with your customers and also with your stakeholders. Like if you sit in product, but sales VP is an important person to be happy with. Like try to set up that communication channel. And the last one is start to fill in the gaps in infrastructure tool data. If you need to re-instrument some tracking to get better data, or if you need to look into some tools, start to look into that.
So I'm going to unpack some of those elements later, but I want to finish on the first quarter. First quarter, what should you be doing?
Assuming you are lucky and you work hard, you get some quick wins, right? You get some excitement around you. That momentum and excitement is very important. Now you want to take that to build this thing into a more like program, right? Like culture and make this more formal. Like you have a sustainable growth process that will allow you to generate wins constantly. So there are 5 things again. The first thing is create a growth model, like understand how your product grow. The second thing is build experimentation program, like make this more formal, have a cadence. How many experiments are you trying to launch every week? And what is the process, right? Like have this to be a part of your operating system. The third thing is choose a system of records. Document learnings, document results is such a big part. Otherwise, it get lost. And after 2 years, the new hires begin to do the same experiments you already did like 2 years ago and didn't work. The fourth thing is start a weekly growth meeting. Again, this is part of the program systemization. And the last thing is create a growth culture. Like growth culture is so critical. A lot of times, I saw why growth team fail is like this company doesn't have a culture to nurture it, to make it successful. So yeah, those are the 5 things I would try to aim for in the first 90 days.
Hila, I was listening to you there and I had so many questions listening to you, but now I get to dive into them. You said in the first week, dive into historical data. Many founders don't necessarily have the best data repositories, the best data ready for a growth hire. For founders listening, what from a data preparation side can they do to ensure that a new growth hire can really ramp up fast on the data preparation side?
First of all, many growth person are also data person. Like one of my favorite profile to hire is a former analyst turned growth PM. So if you can find unicorn like that, this person can help you clean up some of the data as well. So like that's one thing I would share. But on the other hand, I would say for B2C product, there are a couple data point or data sources you should try to have available. App Store data is not enough if you have an app. You want to have marketing channel attribution data from tools like Adjust or things like that so that you know which channel is bringing which users, right? That's the number one question. The other thing is product analytics and user behavior data. A lot of founders in early stage, they use Google Analytics. It's okay, but I would say it's last generation of analytic tool. You want to have tools like Amplitude or Mixpanel or things like that. It really require you to have a tracking plan and also instrument the tracking of the events so that you know what users are using in my product. Like, where are they come from? Channel, right? What they are doing, that's the product analytics. And then there are a lot of tools in B2C like Segment, make linking all those data much easier. So that's B2C. B2B, the data situation is in general much worse. I would say B2B is almost like kindergarten level if B2C is third grade level in terms of data foundation. So especially if you are traditionally a sales-led motion, you're starting from sales, right? You don't need to know so much about your product usage and all of that. So I think the first step, if you want to hire a growth team or start a product-led growth motion, is instrument product analytics. Like I mentioned, Amplitude, Mixpanel, Pando, like there are also open source product analytics solutions, like so that you know what features users are using and connect that with the backend purchase data so that you have that usage and purchase journey. And then that's the most fundamental thing. The next level requirement, if you can do that, is have all the data sources connected. Again, Salesforce data, which record sales activity, Marketo, which has all the marketing activity, how that linked to the product usage data, but that's much harder.
It is much harder. And so let's just say we've got all the different data sources. Well, you said for the first month now, we've got, this beautiful amount of data from all these different channels. You said first month you should pick your growth metric. How do you advise these new hires on how to pick the right metric to focus on?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is figure out the North Star metric. You can talk with the CEO, you can talk with the leadership team, you can ask them, like, what is the most important metric? Like, I'm hired for growth. What I'm trying to grow here? What is the most important thing?
Okay, so let's just pause on that. I always ask this, and everyone always says, revenue. And I go, no, revenue is not, and like, in my eyes, and we can have a debate on it, it's an output. It's not an input. It's like, amount of sessions created will drive the revenue. Amount of referrals made will drive the output is the revenue, but it's not the input. Do you see what I mean? It's a result. So what is the North Star metric? Like, how do you advise founders on how to choose a North Star metric?
Yeah, exactly. I think North Star metric need to be in the intersection of three things. The first thing is the business objective. Revenue usually is the business objective, right? Sometimes it's something else. The other thing is users are getting value from your product. Like, you need to think about users because otherwise the revenue may not last, right? And the third thing is the strategic direction, the strategic focus of the company at this time, maybe for this year, right? As an example, like Uber, they may choose say, like, let's focus on safety for this year because there are all sorts of incidents. Like, that's the most important thing we want to focus. Maybe it's not revenue at this moment in this year. Maybe in their early stage, right, they may focus on user growth or rider growth or driver growth at some given time. And then later stage, they may focus on revenue, right, because that's the right moment to focus on that. So North Star metric need to be reflecting your business objective, user getting value, but also your strategic direction. So when I joined at GitLab, I talked with our CEO. We have ARR, not ARR growth as our North Star metric for the company, which is fine. But for me as a growth leader, right, or for any other teams, I need to break that down into inputs, exactly as you mentioned, and work on the inputs. I cannot work on revenue directly, but I can work on like the new user activation rate, free to paid conversion rate, or some other metric that is the input to that ARR.
I totally agree with you on the inputs is what you work on. Can I ask, when do you change that metric? Number one, most important one.
Yeah. I think North Star metric shouldn't be changing very frequently. Otherwise, it's not a North Star metric. It's a South, like a East to West Star metric, right? It's all over the place. That should be like doesn't change for several years, or at most like once per year, right? You reevaluate the big focus for the company. But the focus area metric, like I mentioned, right? The free to paid conversion rate, the retention rate, the specific input metric, I tend to reevaluate that quarterly with my team. Like, did we make enough headway on this one so that we can move to the next one, or we want to continue?
I totally agree with you on the North Star metric remaining the same. I see it change too many times. You mentioned activation and conversion there. I do have to touch on it because you mentioned before to me that they're your two favorite growth levers. Why is that the case? Why activation and conversion?
Yeah, because first of all, those two levers are the easiest place to find quick wins. Like I mentioned, as a new growth person or growth leader, you want to find quick wins because wins change people's perception. You can get more resources, everything else become easier. Those two places are the easiest place to find wins. Like even now when I work with my advisory clients, I usually do a new user funnel audit with them as one of the first things. I look at their marketing website, I look at their sign up flow, I look at their onboarding experience and the purchase experience. Like there are usually a lot of low-hanging fruits you can pick and you can experiment, get results right away. So I think it's a great way to find quick wins and build confidence and trust.
You've also said before about kind of how important loops are, but that does not mean we should abandon funnels. Just so I can like fully get this, like what's a funnel and what's a loop for anyone listening?
It now become a scientific discussion now. So it's funny because I now teach growth courses at a Replit as a EIR, executive in residence. One of the course I teach is called Advanced Growth Strategy. It's all about growth loops. There are three main categories of growth loops. There is the content SEO loop. Basically, content can bring you traffic and the users users can generate more content, right? So that's one. There is also the paid loop where you can use those paid channels to get users. Users make money, spend money, and then you use the money to buy more ads and get more users. And then there's viral loop where like in Acorn's case, I invite my friend to join and my friend can invite someone else to join. Loops is compounding, meaning what you do here will bring more of that. Like users will bring more users, content will bring more content. So it's awesome, right? It's like compounding. It's every growth person's dream. This thing is working on its own, right? It's awesome. It's very, very important. But funnel is also important. Funnel is just a different perspective. Like in Replit, it's kind of hot take because sometimes in Replit lessons, we don't see the funnel word. We don't see the F word. But students get confused because they're like, I still look at funnel every day, right? Funnels is a way to look at all the steps within the loops. If I'm inviting a friend to join, that is a loop. But I still need to look at the step, like I sign up for Acorns, I invite a friend, my friend accept. Like there is steps, there is a conversion rate, drop-off rate in each of the steps. That's how you look at a funnel. So I would say loop is a strategic tool. You think about how to construct the mechanisms, how your product grow. It's compounding, it's very powerful, but you don't think about that every day. You think about maybe initially when you're building the product and you look as a growth leader, you look into the future, you're thinking about the next loop. You need to invest now in SEO so that it will kick into play like in a while. Loops is an execution tool. You look at the steps, you look at the conversion rate, you launch experiments to drop them. You look at it day to day. People who are executing look at the funnel much more closely.
What are the biggest mistakes you see founders make when it comes to loops?
I think the biggest mistake is, one, don't think about loops. You only think about funnel, right? You don't think about those powerful things. You miss the opportunity of constructing those. The second thing is just by having it there doesn't mean it will work as a loop. Just put 4 things into a circle and draw a line, connect them, doesn't make it a loop. For example, if I launched a referral mechanism in Acorns, doesn't mean people will use it, right? There are things you can do to make people to use it. You can add incentive, experiment with the experience, make the process super smooth. Think about the motivation, like why this loop will spin. Like just put 4 things there. It doesn't mean it will work. You need to make it work.
Totally agree with you. I absolutely also think like the amplification of loops, which is like you can very quickly see in organic things that work. So content that works incredibly well, where it hits and you've got above, I don't know, 50,000 views on whatever platform, double down, pay, promote it everywhere else. Like A/B test content that works and then spend to get even better. Do you see what I mean? It's like amplification of loop. Final one, I kind of think. You said before about kind of systems of record and codifying these learnings. How do you do that? Do you do it? What tools do you use? Who's responsible for codifying it? How do you do that lesson documentation?
There are 2 steps. One is documenting. The growth PMs or the people doing the experiments is responsible for doing that. And there are so many tools. It doesn't need to be fancy. Like we used Google Doc, we used the slide deck. If you have tools like Confluence or any knowledge documentation system, you can use that. At GitLab, we have everything open source. We have a handbook, so it's open and public, and actually people look at our experiments and it's categorized by like, is this activation, acquisition, and you can click in to see what's the hypothesis, what we tested, what's the results, what's the next step. That's super critical. That's one. The other step is, I would say, is beyond documentation is sharing. You need to proactively share this with your stakeholder, with the team, like make this as valuable as possible, because they may stumble upon something that will utilize this learning and make this learning doing more for the entire company. At Acorns, we often run ads that work so well, and we begin to implement that feature in the product. Like we have a calculator, retirement calculator ads. We talk about if you start saving today in 20s, in your 30s, what difference does that make, right, in your retirement saving? The ads work so well. We implemented then in email. We implemented a feature in the product to kind of for the same concept as well. So that is critical too.
Can I ask you, you mentioned there the retirement calculator. Can you talk to me about an experiment or a growth decision that you made without data to back it up? How did it go, and what were some surprising takeaways for you? If we ask you the question, what's the most surprising result that happened, as you said, what would you answer?
At GitLab, we definitely have a lot of situations where we don't have data to back it up. As I mentioned, a lot of B2B companies, the data foundation is lacking, right? We don't have all the granular trackings. So a lot of times, for example, when we make a change in the new user onboarding flow or new user sign up flow, because the data is not sophisticated and our sample size is also small. That's another thing for B2B and also for early stage products. Your sample size is so small, we can wait for 2 months to get results and statistical significance, or we can call it a win and implement it. So sometimes we need to make that decision to do that. And in those cases, I would say you try to make sure you have the qualitative, like your user feedback or something to back it up, and also monitor, is there any backfire later on? And those is what you have to do in those situations.
Hila, I have so many things I could talk to you about. I could talk to you all day, but I want to move into a quick fire round. So I say a short statement, you give me your immediate thoughts. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
So what tactics have not changed over the last 5 years?
I think all tactics change in the last 5 years, but the fundamental principles, like the scientific methods, data, experimentation, psychology, human being, those are the same.
What tactics have really died? I know everything changes, but some do die.
Like a lot of channels died down, right? Do you remember? I don't think they died. Like Clubhouse become much smaller now, right? And a lot of other channels, they don't exist anymore.
How do the best practices in China differ to those in the US?
That's something I can talk about like all day long. But the most popular role in China's growth space is called operation. It doesn't exist here in US at all. I was confused initially. But what is behind that is because the average labor cost in China is lower. So a lot of things that tend to be automated here in the US are handled by human. And that's called the role of operation. And like think about rather than using the product experience to onboard a new user, we have a WeChat group. We have someone in there responsible for talk with everyone to onboard you into a new program or new product. Yeah, that's one of the big ones. And WeChat is another big one. The WeChat doesn't exist in US. It is a super app combining Facebook, payment, Slack, everything. And that completely changed the trajectory of growth, how growth has been done.
What are the single most common reasons why growth teams fail?
Culture is the biggest one, I would say. And also lack of data foundation is another one.
Tell me, what would you advise a growth leader joining a new role in a new company today?
Find the trains that already left the platform. Like almost think about yourself as an investor. Like try to be very critical and picky about those companies. Evaluate the culture, evaluate the leadership team. Is there a foundation for growth to be successful? And try to stay ahead of the next wave. Like think about AI, think about Web3. I don't know, like there's always something exciting if you can stay in the front.
What would you most like to change about the world of growth, Hila?
Yeah, I think one thing I would say product-led growth is fundamentally data-led growth. I would love more people to know the importance of data.
What's the biggest mistake you've made in experimentation or new channel expansion? When you look back over the years, what's the biggest mistake you've made?
I think the biggest mistake I made in my early days is try to move too fast without getting buy-in from the stakeholders. The experiment might be successful, but there's so much resistance in implementing the winner.
I totally agree with you. Integration is half the battle. Tell me, final one, what one company growth strategy have you been most impressed by recently?
ChatGPT is the one, right? Like they have such an awesome and kind of revolutionary product. The almost growth is powered by that. That's one, like super strong word of mouth and organic growth. I think Miro is another one. They are doing great in terms of B2B product-led growth.
I totally agree with you on ChatGPT because it's almost like this UGC loop, where I know the point is it's not UGC, but you implement enough inputs to get the outputs. So I totally agree with you. Hila, this has been so fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me, and I've so loved chatting.
Yeah, me too. I had a great time. Thank you for the opportunity, Harry.
You are a star.